Welcome to the Peaceful Presence Podcast, where tranquility meets transformation. If you find yourself dealing with constant busyness and distractions, or just feelings of being stuck and overwhelmed, you're not alone. This is your space to reconnect with God and discover the peace, purpose, and power that's within us all. Join us on a journey to inner serenity and spiritual renewal. Welcome to the Peaceful Presence Podcast. Welcome to another episode of the Peaceful Presence Podcast. And today you will meet my guest, Melissa, and hear her compelling story of how her life was once spiraling into the depths of addiction and hitting what many would call rock bottom. But it was at that dark moment that something extraordinary happened, a sign that Melissa believes was direct from God. And this experience became the catalyst for a remarkable transformation. Not only did she find her way into recovery, but her faith has guided her into a newfound purpose, and it continues to be her strongest ally in the face of life's challenges. With that, I welcome Melissa, and thank you so much for being here today and being part of this podcast and sharing with me and many others your story and your transformation.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. So let's go back, 5+ years. What was happening in your life at that time?
Yeah, so I was, at the end of my run in my addiction. So things were not so great. I felt like I was in this hole, and I continued to dig a hole for myself, just through the trauma, the addiction, the strain of relationships with family, friends, my loved ones. That's kind of where I was at. I was using, and doing things that just were something I would never thought I would ever do, just to get by. And, I went down to this level or this place that I just felt like it was like an out of body experience. I was like not tied to my morals and values anymore. I wasn't tied to my faith. For some reason, like I felt like my life was just like not at one point, worth living anymore. So that's where I was at, 5+ years ago before I made a change.
And how old were you at that time, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, so I was like 27, 28.
Okay. And then how long had you been struggling with addiction?
Overall, I think it was a struggle for about almost 10 years. The addiction started, at a young age. I was like 14, 15, where I was exploring, and
Right.
it got real bad, in my late 20s.
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier you had a trauma, an event that maybe made it spiral out of control. Was that what had happened?
Yeah. So I'm very, very open about this, but, just being in relationships with, that were around domestic violence,
Mm-hmm.
being in relationships that were enabling for, drinking with other alcoholics, doing drugs with other addicts, being involved in those situations is just a recipe for a disaster. And then, back in 2015, I was sexually assaulted by people I trusted. And I didn't know what to do at that time. I just kept my mouth shut. And, I didn't have any friends or family in the city I was living in. And for me to survive and move forward, and get back to my home, I had to, accept the ride from those people that did that. And it was just a very, almost like, I don't even know how to put it in a nicer way, but it was just like a disgusting feeling,
Yeah.
The drinking and the drugs got worse, and I thought it would stop because of that. But it got so bad that I had to, I wasn't doing good in school anymore. I had to have my parents come and move me, and I came up with an excuse to get out of, living there. And I came back, and I just couldn't come back from it. And it was, one toxic relationship after the next, being codependent and struggling, and then trying to maintain a different life. So I was just like living a double life.
It wasn't you. Yeah.
No,
Did
it was like, yeah, I don't even know what it was. It was like, I was like in the middle, but I was like trying to be a good person. It was like me battling to try to be a good person and a model person for the outside world. And then like my whole inside addiction and my struggle with all of the trauma and everything that, kind of came with that really dark side,
Did you open up about that experience with anybody, or was that something that you kept to yourself?
I kept to myself for,
Mm,
I disclosed it to my mother and my, now in my recovery, but even then I didn't want to tell her that it was
sure.
one person,
Yeah.
and I just to protect her in a way, I guess. But I was telling her, some things that had happened just so she had an idea of what my life was.
Right.
For me to just be honest too about my situation.
Right. And
Mhm.
so you're fortunate you had a supportive mom. And what was your upbringing like? I mean, did you have seeds of faith planted in you as a child at all? And so was there an element of that in your life?
Yeah. Yeah, it was great. I think some of my best times too in my childhood was like I looked forward to Sunday because I knew we were
Yeah.
going to church. I knew I was gonna see my friends. My mom sang in the choir. We were really involved. So
Okay.
I did all the retreats and and just was really involved in youth group. And so I had those seeds planted from, I was from, very young. So and that, continued through to about high school. And then I got so overly involved with sports that became my life. But I still, everything that I learned and, staying true to my faith and prayer and, knowing that, God always had a plan that was always on my mind too,
Mhm.
and, doing what I had done as a young child, with my mom taking me and everything. So
Yeah, like you said, you had these two different roles of a person because you probably had those seeds planted that you knew what was good and what wasn't good for you.
exactly.
So maybe tell us about 5 years ago. This was the moment that you felt you hit rock bottom. What happened during that time, and share with us the encounter that you felt at that time.
Yeah. So at that time, my life was waking up, drinking, getting drugs, and that's how I spent my days. And I didn't even know what day it was. I was in a relationship at the time with somebody that, was an alcoholic. And it was to the point where like there was just no saving me anymore. And like, he was expressing concern being
No.
an alcoholic himself, and I was not receptive. And so, of course I was rebelling at that time. And May 5th was a really rough day for me. I had partied way too hard. Woke up, full of regret and not knowing what happened the night before. I even lost my car. Uh,
Mm.
my boyfriend's like, get your stuff and get out of here now. Like you don't have an option. Like this is it. Um, I
So the boyfriend that was an alcoholic at the same
Yeah.
time, I mean, he's recognizing you're worse off than me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like take your stuff and leave. I'm not dealing with this anymore.
Yeah.
You have an issue and you need to figure it out, and I was like, what do you mean? And it was like a lot of bickering, but I took all my stuff, got out, but then I was like, where's my car? And so that's when I recognized, I was like, where am I going? I burned all my bridges on purpose because I didn't want people to be worried about me. So I hadn't talked to my mom, cut off my dad. I would check in here and there. Wasn't talking to my brother, my best friends. Like they knew something was up. So I was like, I'm not gonna talk to them, so I was burning those bridges on purpose. So people weren't concerned about me or asking questions about like my life's choices. So
Mhm.
at that time, it was just like, I'm in an alley, I feel awful, just from the night before, and I don't know what to do, where to go. So I've sat around for hours because I'm like, I don't want to call anyone. I don't, my ego is still very much in the way of everything. And
Mhm.
um, I, it was, a sunny day, And, the sun was shining, but there was like, after a couple hours time, like there was just this moment where there was just this light that was unexplainable for me. So I look over and I'm like looking at this light and I'm like, something like it's speaking to me
Mm.
and I need to take this in now. Like, obviously I need to start taking signs. And this is God telling me something. What is he telling me? And he kind of sat on it for a second and I made that phone call. I made that phone call to my mother. My mom was like the first one to call me out on my BS, knowing that I had a problem. And
Mhm.
she was the first one I called because she was right. And they typically always are right. So
Yeah.
yeah, I gave her a phone call and she was nothing but welcoming and was waiting for me to make that choice and made it very clear. She said, I have been waiting for this phone call for you to tell me that you needed help. Uh,
Mm.
and that right there was just like, that was God's plan.
Yeah.
Melissa's plan. Melissa got out of the way, you know.
Yeah.
So it was just it was a amazing experience as far as like my rock bottom. It couldn't have been more spiritual,
Mhm.
and made
So
me recognize what I needed to get back to.
right. So you make this phone call, you call your mom. What happened from there? How did you begin to your path to recovery?
Yeah, so you know, she welcomed me back into the home, of course with a couple rules in place, as far as maintaining some sobriety and getting to meetings and so I went back there and I started making phone calls and making moves on trying to get into a treatment facility. So
Was that difficult for you at that time? I mean, you had been struggling with addiction for so long, so to just maybe cut it all off, was it a struggle for you?
it was rough. Yeah. The detox that comes with it and all those physical symptoms, along with all the emotional things and just like reflecting on certain things of your past through that time is really hard. But I will say that it was so easy for me to be willing to go to treatment. And I've never worked so quickly and so fast on trying to get help. In my addiction, I felt like I didn't accomplish anything and it took me forever to get anything done. And I never really got anything done. I would get into all these things and then not accomplish anything. But I think something was just like telling me this is what I need to do for myself. And if I want a better life and, I want to better myself and my future, that like this is what I need to do. And so I worked really hard on finding a treatment program.
Mhm. It sounds like you had a sincere motivation at that time and nothing was gonna stand in your way of that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was living in acceptance.
Mhm.
All started with that experience that I had that was, that spiritual experience of that light. I was like, there's something guiding me through this and I need to listen. I need to
Yeah.
stop resisting and I just need to listen and walk with instead of walk against.
So how would you say that your spiritual life has evolved since your encounter and how did it impact your recovery and your relationships?
Yeah, so oh man, it's evolved throughout these 5 years. It's been a rocky road to be honest.
Sure.
Up and down, with life's challenges always comes, these questions of faith for me.
Mhm.
And I had to really, really work on knowing that all of these things that are these obstacles in my life are all of God's lessons for me. And it's how I'm going to receive it. And so, like, through that, it's just evolved to this like, I'm living in his will and not mine, and I can let go now. It helps me sleep at night.
Yeah.
And it helps me, in those situations that I want to be controlling. It's like, God, he has my back. I just have to let him have my back. And what can I take from this? Because he's not going to do all, I have to do some of the work. He's just going to help me get there. So yeah.
How do you turn over that control at times? Like, how have you learned to do that?
Yeah. So, well, I sit in it for a few minutes. I think sometimes I have to sit and process, and then, from there, I pray. I pray, and I really rely on, prayer to get me through, to let these situations where I'm feeling, anxiety ridden, or feeling depressed, or feeling like things aren't going to work out the way as planned, or, and pray, and just let him know that these are my honest and true feelings. Like, just help guide me through this, and I feel like that gets me through that moment of feeling so stressed, or feeling so anxious, or feeling that sadness. I don't feel alone,
Yeah.
have to walk the path alone. So I think it's just sitting, reflecting, and then giving time to God, to know
Yeah.
that it's going to be okay in just a few minutes, or in a few days, or a few months. It's just not on my time,
Yeah.
I had to understand that lesson.
Well, there's a scripture that says, "Cast your burdens onto me." And so it sounds like that is exactly what you've learned to do. It doesn't mean it doesn't impact you or affect you, but I love how you said, I sit with it for a minute, and then I process it, and then I pray about it, and I give it over. I hand it over to him to help me through it. It's not that you can't be active in your own life and participate and do action steps, but you ask for help, and you co-create it. You co-create what happens next in your life.
Yeah.
Um,
Beautifully
so, so what would you say, if you were to look back over the last 5 years, what have been the significant changes in your life and mindset that you've encountered?
Yeah, yeah. I think, welcoming my spirituality back in my life, in the beginning of my recovery, was something that, it did take some time, just through everything I went through.
Yeah. You
I
probably had questions, right?
I
Like,
had
how did this
so
happen
many
to me? Why would you let
so
this
many
happen to
questions.
me? Yeah.
Yes, yes. I even have a journal entry, that was around the question, how and why. And I
Mhm.
read that, and it was so dark, and so far away from my, faith, that I'm like, now I can look at that as a really beautiful piece of, like a learning experience. It's like, okay, it's not about how and why. It's just, it's living life on life's terms, and that, God had put me in these situations in my past, that I have gone through and endured, and become this person that I am today. Like, that's why, and it's worth accepting and being proud of that,
Mhm.
and it's hard, but at the same time, there's this really amazing story to share with others. And
Yeah.
so with that, I feel like I finally, through my battles in the beginning of not, having a hard time believing again, I guess, is how I could put it at that time. um, I recognize through the actually feeling, with substances and everything removed, that that's just like, this is life, and it's not going to get easier. I just have
Mhm.
to embrace these challenges that he's, bringing forth to me, because he knows that it's something that I can handle, and I can handle it differently,
Mm.
and he's not giving me anything that I can't handle. So I can get through this, whether it seems hard or not. But and that's where I was my first year. So it was a little rocky, but through recovery step work, through going to church, and to talk, connecting again with others that, have the same faith as me, or believe in something, it made it easier to talk about it. And
Right.
when you talk about it, things get, for me, I started to heal, and I just started to lean into it. And for me, I need church, as far as like the education of scripture, and breaking things down, and just being in an environment where I'm uplifted, is something
Mhm.
for me, and so that's kind of what it looked like. It was like a little, it was a struggle, but now it's on this peak where I'm like in full acceptance, and I'm so happy to have God present in my life, and know that he loves me. He was never out to get me.
Yeah, because I would say in recovery, spirituality is not always talked about in that. And so you, correct me if I'm wrong, you learned a way to marry spirituality and faith alongside, the practical steps of recovery. And from what I hear you saying, the two just went hand in hand and really helped elevate you to a place of full recovery, really.
Yeah. Well, and having that faith and having spirituality can it can bring so much more opportunity. Like especially in my situation, the moment that I just was able to learn how to let go and to start to pray again and make it part of my routine, and just connect with others and be open. And if I
Mhm.
understand something, I could talk about that. It's just it's made me into a better person overall.
Yeah.
Also, like my inner peace is there now. I know that I can go to that place where I am not alone, even if I'm alone in a room, I'm not alone, So it's just this amazing thing that I don't have to feel like, I'm alone or, and that was like my favorite saying in my addiction. I'm alone, no one understands, like no one gets me, no one's been through it, and it's like I'm over here just
Mhm.
um and now it's just like, no, I have everybody in my corner. I just have to see it. I have to sit back, listen, and I have to see what's around me. And that's the biggest like take I get from my faith and my spirituality. It's just sitting back, listening and looking.
Well, I love that, and I will say this, when I know some of the changes in your life because you now are in a place professionally where you work and you help people going through addiction and going through mental health challenges. And because you went through these hard things and difficult moments, you can really you've walked the walk and you can talk the talk and you can help people really navigate their way to recovery. So when you look back now and you look back at that journal entry that says why me and why did this happen, there look at the dozens of people that you've been able to help now and really understand what they're going through because you've been there. And I would say that has been a significant change that you've had in your life. And also to mention, you have a 1-year-old baby girl.
Yeah.
So that too is a life-changing moment. But what a blessing. Really, what a blessing.
What a blessing. I know. And it's interesting you say this because and I'll make it brief, but I think like in recovery, people are always asking, what is your purpose? What's your purpose? Or what's my purpose? I don't understand my purpose and I don't know. And, and it's like, I was there. I get it. I get it. And I'm still, we're all trying to find a purpose, but I think like, and I think like for me, my purpose is to wake up each day and live the life that God had planned for me. And it could be a simple day of just spending it with my daughter, but it's
Mhm.
present. My purpose is to be present in this life and not live like where for me, I was just like this empty being. And I felt like I was sitting in a chair and that people like just almost like New York City, like people are just going by me and I sitting there and letting it happen.
Mhm.
And so for me, it's like my purpose is to be present and be able to sit back and observe and look and enjoy and be mindful and not be somewhere else, and just be here now. And that's my purpose. And with that, I can help others that way. And I can, be present as a mother now.
Yeah.
And I can be present in my career and and in my spirituality. Like there's just so many things. If I can just stay in that moment, then it can only get better,
Yeah.
from there. So it's living now, it's not surviving. Is
Yeah. And participating. Yeah.
yeah.
What a beautiful thing to say. Let me ask you this. If you could share one piece of advice with somebody that's maybe currently struggling with addiction or in even uh, any other challenges based on your own experience and the role of that faith has played in your recovery, what would that be?
And there's so much I would like to say,
No,
but
well, actually say it all. Say what comes to
yeah,
mind.
yeah, no, that's, I feel that, I mean, the quick version would be to take the leap and to just let go, and let others help guide you in the beginning, if you don't know where to start, let others pick you up and help you get started. That's my biggest thing is lean into the help in the community. And I think too, as far as spirituality goes, and with people in recovery and struggling with that it's going to take time. Trying to heal pain and hurt and grief and trauma is not easy, and so for me it's like just ease into it and let others help. And I think too is just sitting back and just listen in the beginning. There's nothing you need to do. You can just sit and listen and take in the things that you feel would apply to you and start to practice those slowly and implement them into your daily schedule, or daily routine or whatever that looks like for you. But um my biggest thing is to take that leap and to let others lift you up, because people genuinely want to help, those that are struggling,
Right.
I've been there, so of course I'm going to pick up whoever, but it's just like we don't know until you let us know.
Yeah.
I think that's like my biggest thing is ease into it, because it doesn't happen overnight. But listen to what's around you and listen to others who have been through it, and
Yeah.
just have an open mind. And I think too is like that's something that's learned over time. It's doing that inner work that we have to do and
Mhm.
address to start to receive new information and start to receive, you know, interest in spirituality and interest in self-care and interest in all these different things.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
my biggest thing is just listen, you know,
Yeah.
and take the time to sit down and ask questions. It's okay to be challenged, ask others, what their beliefs are and what is this, where do I even get started?
Right.
People right there that are willing to help guide you through that.
Yeah. I mean, we just live in such a busy world now, and there's so many distractions that pull at us every day. And so taking that time to really self-reflect and listen and observe and just spend some time with yourself and really connect with other people, like a true connection, not just, texting or things
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that. Like there's that speaks volumes and that goes a long way.
yeah.
I want to ask you if I can just for any parents that are maybe watching, just two quick questions. So you started this, in your younger years. For you personally, what made you start to dabble in this? And I ask that because, I there's a lot of drugs out there now, and um, what do you think was missing in your life at that time that maybe made you want to try?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, the first time I tried, I was about 15. So I think it's the fitting in,
Hmm.
you know, wanting to be a part of. I always felt I felt different, or I never felt good enough, to be in a group of people, you know. Since being a child, and I won't go too far into it, but being a people pleaser, you
Yeah.
and wanting everyone to be happy, and that everything's okay, and I just want to make sure everybody's good, and I want to fit in, and I want to make sure, so I feel like that's what that was the dabbling, that
Yeah.
that was where it was like a lot of social pressure and the want to fit into somewhere, but like I didn't know. I felt like what was missing was me not having boundaries and me not understanding that it's okay to say no.
Hmm.
Um, so that's where that really the dabbling started. And then just the continuing on with it.
Yeah, and I ask that because, I just think that there are a lot of, teenagers, you were young at the time, that are out there, and it is that pressure to fit in, and just, where that stems from. because you had a supportive environment and it was like, okay, I want to fit in with these people. And now in retrospect, those weren't the people that, you needed approval from, but it's just at that time and moment in our lives, it feels so important to get that. And then just to also say, like, for any parents listening out there and you grew up in sounds like a faith-filled home and you had those seeds planted of, God, going to church, how important that is that we do that in one way, shape, or form for our kids, because having that foundation planted allows somebody like yourself and anybody else to come back to that and know that there's something deeper and more worthwhile that's waiting for us. Once we realize that the drugs, the alcohol, whatever other fixes are out there really aren't satisfying us, there's a place to go in that foundation, and that foundation is there.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
It's so important. I think it built so much of my morals and values and an understanding of life in general,
Yeah,
to those decisions and everything that I made were, those out of body decisions that I typically wouldn't do,
right.
knew it was wrong. And then I was beating myself to pull for it, because I was like, well, this was definitely not God's plan. Look at me now. I'm a mess. He's not going to love me anymore because of
Mm.
the decisions. But I will say that, it brought me back and he was there for me. And I knew that like, this is what I need to get back to.
Yes, and look at you now, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yes. Well, thank you so much for being willing to be on this show and share your story, and I hope that it inspires other people, whether they know somebody or they're struggling with anything themselves, that they know hope is possible. And I'm just so proud to hear all the things that you've accomplished in these last 5 years and the impact that you're having on so many lives. And I'm grateful to know you and grateful to see all the great work that you're doing.
Thank you so much. And I'm grateful to know you too and
Yeah.
here today. It's fun. It's fun to be able to talk about my faith openly, because recovery, it's very much like the higher power is what we use the term to, be respectful of everyone. So
Right.
it's nice to be able to talk about God openly. It's even kind of weird because I'm so used to doing recovery stuff that I'm like trying not to say higher power.
Yes. It limits
So,
you it
but
limits you a little bit, but
yeah.
yeah, really and truly it went hand in hand in your recovery and yeah. So
Yeah. So thank you so much for having me.
thank you too. Thank you for joining us. If you liked what you hear, please like, share, and follow and subscribe. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. I hope you found it meaningful and insightful. Don't forget to share, subscribe, like, or follow to stay connected and updated on future episodes. I hope you will join me on the next episode of the Peaceful Presence podcast. Until then, may you find ways to reconnect within and with God and develop your own peaceful presence in your everyday life.